All right, this is a video on the multipliers, just some practice with multipliers, and then a general problem that we're going to have to fix. So I've given you the MPC. I'm not giving you the MPS. I've not given you the government spending multiplier, the tax multiplier, and then I'm going to ask how much do we increase or decrease spending to help us get out of the gap? How much do we increase or decrease taxes to help us fix the gap, to get aggregate demand over to fix the gap? So the question is about a recessionary gap of 20 billion. So I drew the graph for you, and I have a recessionary gap, right? My current is left of the long run, full employment. I even wrote gap 20 billion. You don't have to do that. You just have to show the gap is here, but that's what I did. Over here we have the multiplier formula for government spending, the multiplier formula for the tax multiplier. And then first we have to figure out whether we're increasing spending or decreasing spending. And then the last step is figure out how much are we increasing spending or decreasing spending. How much are we increasing taxes or decreasing taxes? So the first thing you got to do is figure out what the MPS is if I have the MPC. So they have to equal 1, so 0.8, which means the MPS must be 0.2. 0.5, it must be also 0.5 because that's to equal 1. And then MPC is 0.9, this has to equal 0.1. So now I can figure out my government spending multiplier. Government spending multiplier is 1 over the NPS, so 1 over 0.2 is 5, 1 over 0.5 is 2, and then 1 over 0.1 is 10. That's my government spending multiplier. How do I figure out the tax multipliers? Well, it's the MPC over the NPS. You could do it this way, or you could just take 1 minus each government spending multiplier. So it's 1 less than government spending multiplier, so it's 4, then 1, and in this case it would be 9. So now I've got the two multipliers. These are the numbers that I'm going to need. This is the important stuff, okay, to figure out which policies I'm going to be doing and how much. So we have a recessionary gap. So for all of them, right, for spending, how am I going to get AD to go to the right? Well, am I going to increase or decrease? Well, to get AD to the right, I'm going to increase. So for all of these, I'm going to increase spending, increase spending, increase spending. Well, what about for taxes? Do you increase taxes to get AD to go to the right or decrease taxes? Well, you want more disposable income. When you want more disposable income, you're going to decrease taxes. So to get AD to go to the right, to get big C to go to the right, then we're going to decrease taxes, decrease taxes, decrease taxes in all the examples. Now comes the last part. How do I figure out how much am I going to increase spending? How much am I going to decrease taxes to get AD to go to the right? Well, it's pretty simple. You take the size of the gap and you divide it by each multiplier, whatever multiplier you get in the question. So let's do the first one. So the gap is 20 billion, and I want to say my multiplier. We'll do the government spending ones first. My multiplier is 5. So how many times 5 is going to give me 20? So I do 5 divided by 20, and I figure out I have to increase spending by 4 billion to close the gap of 20 billion. If the multiplier is 5, if the MPC is 8, 0.8, and the MPS is 0.2. For the next one, you take the multiplier for government spending. All right, so now instead of 5, I'm dividing by 2. So that means that I need to spend 10 billion to get AD to the right to close the gap of 20 billion. What if the MPC is 0.9, my multiplier is 10? So now I've got 20 divided by 10 billion. So I have to spend, in this case, 2 billion to get aggregate demand to the right. Which makes sense. People are spending 90% of the money you give them. So the multiplier, it doesn't take as much spending to get people to spend a lot more. They're spending 90 cents for every dollar. What about taxes? Well, now we're talking about, remember, decreasing taxes. So I think the tax multiplier is 4, so 4 into 20. So 4 divided into 20 gives me 5. I must decrease taxes by 5 billion. Then for the next one, it's 1. Tax multiplier is 1. So I actually have to decrease taxes by 20 billion. 20 over 1 is 20 billion. And then for the last one, the multiplier is 9. The tax multiplier is 9. I divide by the multiplier, and I get 2.2. 2.2 billion. All right, and there's your answers. You're not going to get a question like this. You're going to get a question where it says the MPC is 1. Or the MPC is 0.5, or the MPC is 9. But this is how you would do it. Take a look at this now before we go. What do you notice about the spending multiplier compared to the tax multiplier? Very good. The tax multiplier is one less, right? The tax multiplier is smaller. Why is that? Well, when governments spend, they spend all of it. So let's say we increase spending by 1,000. That entire 1,000 is either borrowed or it's taken from taxes, and they spend the entire 1,000. If you give people a tax cut of 1,000, well, if the MPC is 0.8 and the MPS is 0.2, they're not going to spend the whole 1,000. They're only going to spend 800. So in order to get consumption to move, to get aggregate demand to move, just as far, they have to actually cut taxes by a greater amount. And that's what this shows. If they increase spending, they can close the gap in this one by $4 billion, but they have to cut taxes by $5 billion. In this one, they have to increase spending by $10 billion, but they'd have to cut taxes by $20 billion to have the same effect. So each of these movements leads to a $20 billion increase in output. So you have to cut taxes by more to have the same effect. All right? All right, hope you understand it.